Okay, I wanted to go through and actually take a look at homework 4 and how you go about implementing it and give you some sort of an example to get started off with so that you've got a more concrete example. And we're going to do this in Visual Studio Code, and I'm going to show you how I'm going to use Visual Studio Code to check that my test is actually working properly using some breakpoints. And the thing that I'm looking for is that when you build a test, that it actually has some coverage over the code and is actually exercising the different pieces of code. So I have actually built the test, and it is here inside Visual Studio Code. You notice that I put some sort of a comment up here as to what the file is and who the author is. And I've said @author. We'll get to how you build some self-documenting code later, but I put in @author because I have the habit of doing that because I consistently use self-documenting tools in building code. And I've taken the binary search from the previous stuff and basically cut and pasted it in here. That is this section of code right here. That I'm pretty certain already works because I already ran some tests on it, but I want to build some automated tests for it. And the first thing is how you build this very first test. And one of the things I want to do is I want to take the ability to track the number of errors I get so that at the end I can say, if I got an error, I want to print out that the test didn't pass. So I started out at 0, and in every test that fails, I increment it by 1. So at the bottom I can say, if I got 0 errors, I know everything was good and it passed. Now, the second thing I did is I put in what the expected value of the test is. And the reason that I did this is so that my print statement is basically always the same. It says fail, expected what it was supposed to expect, got what it was supposed to get. So that way I can take this little piece of code right here, those 3 lines, and I can just duplicate them over and over and over, and I'm setting up the test, but I'm pretty certain that I got those 3 lines right. So that gives me the ability to not think too hard about those 3 lines. And when it comes to testing, I like to do my tests in a simple fashion. Now, there are some nice testing packages out there for Python, and if you happen to use one or know one already because you've already been doing some Python work, that is awesome. You don't have to go redo your work for this. But I want to show you a simple way of going about testing. And if you apply this same kind of simple process next semester in your classes and you say, okay, I built this routine, I'm going to use a simple testing process, I'm going to do the following things. It will work and it will save you time, lots of it. So let's look at the 2 things. Okay, I set expect to what I'm expecting to get back, and then I created a variable named got, which is what I got when I passed something to it. And let's take a look at that. The very first one, I passed in an empty list. It doesn't have any tuples in it. That's that right there. And I passed in something for it to search. And it doesn't matter what I pass in because I'm expecting to get, yes, an answer back from it of it didn't find it because guess what? It isn't there. And in an empty list, there is nothing there. Now, why did I pass that in? If I look at my first case inside the code, I say if the list of tuples length is less than 1. Well, an empty list has 0. And 0 is less than 1, so it's going to reach this line right here. It's going to get that case. And I'm going to break it down with tests to reach each case inside the code carefully. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to have a list that's basically length 1, and I'm going to be testing lines 17 through 21. Okay, so that's what you should expect next, right? So in any case, I've got this first test. I pass it an empty list. Then I'm going to have a couple tests, yes, with a list with a single tuple in it. And that single tuple I'm going to test first, did it not find it? And second, did it find it? So in each case, I'm testing one of the cases. And I'm walking through these tests one at a time and going, okay, in the code, what are all the possibilities? Now let's do this very first one and let's show you how you know that you got the result you want. The thing I'm going to do is I'm going to set a breakpoint right there on that line. And I'm going to run it inside the debugger, so I'm going to come over here to the debugger button, and I'm going to run and debug it. That's that blue box up there, and we're just going to do this Python thing here. And when I ran it, Okay. I got to, yes, this case, and look, we've got look for is X. That's that X right there. So I'm pretty certain it's that case. The list of tuples is empty. That's right there. So I've got to be in this very first case. And guess what? I stopped at the line I was expecting to stop to. So I know by putting in a breakpoint that that test case got me to the correct section of code. That I can say, yeah, this test case tests that piece of code. Now, I come up here to this little arrow stop continue button. Continue F5 it is. Click on that, and it runs to the end of whatever it's doing, and it says pass. Because there's some stuff down at the bottom that does that. But as soon as I've done that, I know that that test case actually did what I wanted it to do. Because you got to test your test cases. And successively, if you go through each one of the different returns, and you put in a breakpoint and you put a test for each return, guess what? You will have made certain that you've covered all the possibilities at least once in the code. Now, that doesn't mean that your test is completely thorough, but when you've reached every piece of code in a particular function, then you've got a pretty good idea that you've at least got a test for everything. That doesn't give you all the possibilities. You may have to think through more complex things and say, okay, in this particular test case, did I test all the boundary conditions? But a good starting point is, did I just get everywhere in the code? So I've got a bunch of tests. You'll notice later in the test, I've gone and I've got a list that's too long. Okay, and I'm searching for things. And then eventually I've got a list down here with 3 tuples in it. And I'm searching for things that are smaller than Alice, like AAA. And later I'm searching for things that are bigger than Alice, like Z. And in each case, I've built a test that I do it returns empty, as in it didn't find it. It returns cases where it did find it. And then down at the bottom, I've taken the same stuff from the previous example, and I've said, okay, I want to know at the end, if the number of errors was equal to 0, then everything worked in all the tests. Otherwise, I had a test that failed, and I've got to go fix something. Either the test is broken or the code is broken. But when I go through this process of, okay, here's the code, here's the things I got to test. Did I get everywhere in the code? Did I try everything? Okay, I become relatively confident that the piece of code that I've written actually works. And once I've got a working piece of code, then I can turn around and use that to build bigger things. And I'm not wondering, well, did that piece of code fail or did that other piece of code fail? That process where you go in and you're trying to fix a program and you don't know where it failed, that is a huge time sink. This way you can take a big problem and you can make it successfully smaller by taking piece by piece by piece and testing them and getting to the point where all of these pieces work. So I know if the program doesn't work, it's some combination of the pieces, and you build up from that to a working piece of code. All right. So I added the homework exercise actually yesterday, and I'm going to go in and update it with a link to this video and also the where you could submit the results. And I know some of you emailed me the results, some of you have already finished this, but yes, I did finally get the homework out, and I wanted to build a video specifically for this homework to look at how you built it. All right. There you go, and the due date is not until next week, so hopefully this gives you enough time to work on it. We'll catch you later.